The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest structure ever built by any known species. It floated in the empty space between three dead stars, a massive ring of glass and metal that could hold 10,000 delegates from across the galaxy. Every species that mattered had a seat here. Every species that wanted to survive kept its mouth shut and followed the rules. Humans had been part of the council for 62 years. 62 years of sitting in the back rows. 62 years of being told to wait their turn. 62 years of smiling while alien diplomats made jokes about how short human lives were, how small their ships were, how young their civilization was compared to empires that had ruled star systems for 100,000 years. Jinho had been the human ambassador for only 3 of those years, but he had felt every single one of the 62. He was not a tall man. He did not have the sharp teeth of the Valari or the towering frame of the Brukan. He wore a simple dark suit and kept his hair neat and his expression calm. Most of the alien delegates did not even remember his name. To them, he was just the latest human to sit in the small chair at the back of the hall and raise his hand politely and get ignored. But today was different. Today, the council was voting on a new trade agreement. It was an agreement that would affect the movement of medical supplies across 14 star systems. Billions of lives depended on it. And for the 9th time in 5 years, the council had decided to exclude human shipping lanes from the deal. Human ships carried nearly 40% of all medical cargo in the outer systems. Everyone knew this. Nobody cared. The Valari delegate, a tall creature with silver skin and 6 eyes, had even made a comment about it during the session. He had said that human ships were like insects carrying crumbs across a kitchen floor. Useful, perhaps, but not worth thinking about. The hall had laughed. Even species that depended on those human ships had laughed, because laughing at humans was easy. It cost nothing, or so they thought. Jinho sat in his chair and listened to the laughter. He looked down at his hands. They were steady. He had made his decision 3 months ago. The President of Earth had approved it 2 months ago. The entire human government had voted on it 1 month ago. Every single vote had been the same. Yes, it was time. He waited for the laughter to stop. Then he stood up. Nobody noticed at first. A human standing up in the council hall was like a whisper in a storm. But Jinho did not sit back down. He walked forward, past the rows of alien delegates, past the hovering translation drones, past the armed guards who looked at him like he was lost. He walked all the way to the center of the hall, where the speaking platform floated above a pool of blue light. He stepped onto it. Now they noticed. The Valari delegate leaned forward. The Brukan delegate crossed his massive arms. The Orini, small creatures with huge black eyes, tilted their heads in confusion. 10,000 delegates stared at the small human man standing in the center of their hall. Jinho looked at them. He took a slow breath. "My name is Jinho," he said. His voice was not loud, but the speaking platform carried it to every corner of the hall. "I am the ambassador of Earth. I have served in this hall for 3 years. Before me, there were 21 other ambassadors. Some of them served with pride. Some of them served with hope. All of them served with patience." He paused. "That patience is over." The hall went quiet. Not the polite quiet of attention, the deep quiet of confusion. 62 years ago, humanity joined this council. We were told that membership meant partnership. We were told it meant respect. We were told it meant a voice. He looked around the room. We were lied to. A murmur passed through the delegates. The Valari delegate opened his mouth to speak, but Jinho continued. "In 62 years, not one human proposal has been approved by this body. Not one. We proposed shared defense networks. Denied. We proposed medical aid agreements. Denied. We proposed fair trade routes, denied. Every time, we were told to wait, to be patient, to remember that we are a young species. He let the words sit in the air. We built the shipping lanes that carry your medicine. We designed the water purification systems that keep 3 of your homeworlds alive. We created the translation technology that allows this very hall to function. And in return, you gave us a small chair in the back row, and 62 years of laughter. The Brucon delegate stood up. He was enormous. His voice was like rocks grinding together. You forget your place, human. You are guests here. Jinho looked up at him. He did not flinch. No, Jinho said. We were guests. As of this moment, Earth formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. The silence that followed was absolute. 10,000 delegates sat frozen. The translation drones hummed softly, making sure every species understood what had just been said. Then the laughter started again. First from the Volari, then from the Orini, then from a dozen other species. They laughed because the idea was funny to them. A tiny species, barely a century into space travel, walking away from the most powerful organization in the galaxy. It was like a child running away from home. They always came back. Jinho stood on the platform and watched them laugh. He did not smile. He did not frown. He simply waited. When the laughter faded, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small metal device. He pressed a single button. Every screen in the hall flickered. Every display changed. The Council's communication network, built on human-designed systems, displayed a single message in every known language. Earth has left the Galactic Council. All human services, trade agreements, and technological support will end in 30 standard days. The laughter stopped. Jinho stepped off the platform. He walked back through the hall, past the silent delegates, past the frozen guards, past the rows of empty human seats that would never be filled again. As he reached the door, the Volari delegate called out. His voice was no longer amused. You cannot do this. You need us. He turned around one last time. No, he said quietly. You need us. You just forgot. He walked out of the hall, and the doors closed behind him. On Earth, in a quiet office overlooking the Pacific Ocean, a woman named Yuna watched the broadcast of Jinho's speech. She was the head of Earth's Medical Research Division. She had spent the last 15 years developing treatments for diseases that affected alien species. Diseases that had nothing to do with humans. She had done it because she believed in helping others. She turned off the screen and looked at the stack of files on her desk. Files full of research. Files full of cures. Files that the Council had never once thanked her for. She picked up her phone and made one call. Shut it all down, she said. Every program, every shipment, every update, 30 days. On the other end of the line, someone asked if she was sure. She thought about the years she had spent trying to earn respect from species that would never give it. I have never been more sure of anything in my life, she said. And so, it began. The first week after Earth's departure was filled with jokes. The Volari delegate told the Council that humans would come crawling back within a month. The Brucon delegate said they should change the locks on the Council hall doors just to make a point. The Orini delegates made small, chittering sounds that passed for laughter among their kind. Everyone agreed. Losing the humans was nothing. A minor inconvenience, like losing a single tooth in a mouth full of hundreds. By the second week, the jokes had stopped. It started with the shipping lanes. For decades, human ships had carried cargo across the outer systems, not because anyone had asked them to, but because nobody else wanted to. The outer systems were dangerous. Pirates hid in asteroid fields. Radiation storms could tear a ship apart in seconds. Navigation was difficult because the star maps in that region were incomplete and constantly changing. Humans had mapped those routes themselves. They had built relay stations. They had developed shielding technology that allowed their ships to fly through radiation belts that would cook any other vessel. And they had done it all quietly, without asking for credit, because the cargo needed to move, and nobody else was going to do it. Now, the ships were gone. The relay stations went dark. The navigation data was erased from every shared database. 3 major supply routes collapsed in a single day. Medical shipments to the Arini homeworld were delayed by 2 weeks. Food supplies to a Brukan colony in the Outer Rim never arrived at all. A Valari research station sent an emergency signal after their life support filters, designed and maintained by human engineers, stopped receiving software updates and began to fail. The council held an emergency session. The Valari delegate was no longer laughing. He stood at the speaking platform and demanded that the council send ships to replace the human fleet. But when the numbers were calculated, the truth was ugly. Replacing the human shipping network would require 12,000 new vessels, 60 new relay stations, and navigation maps that only humans possessed. The estimated cost was more than the entire council budget for a standard year. The estimated time to build it was 14 years. They did not have 14 years. They barely had 14 days. On Earth, a man named Dohun sat in a dark room filled with screens. He was the head of Earth's defense operations. He was 43 years old, and he had spent 20 of those years studying every alien military force in the galaxy. He knew their ships, their weapons, their strategies, and their weaknesses. He knew things about the Council's own defense network that the Council itself had forgotten. Dohun had always been a quiet man. He did not give speeches like Jinho. He did not save lives like Yuna. He sat in dark rooms and planned for the worst. And now the worst had arrived, not for Earth, but for everyone else. His job was simple: make sure nobody got in. Earth had sealed its borders the moment Jinho walked out of the council hall. Every human colony, every station, every outpost was now behind a defense grid that Dohun had been building in secret for the past 10 years. The council did not know about it. They had never thought to look. Why would they? Humans were harmless. Humans were weak. Humans were the species you laughed at during lunch. The defense grid was not weak. It was a network of automated weapons platforms, sensor arrays, and energy shields that covered every approach to human space. Dohun had designed it himself, using technology that he had never shared with the council. The platforms could identify a ship from 3 light-years away and destroy it before it got within 1. The shields could absorb the combined firepower of the entire Valari fleet and still hold. Not unless Dohun wanted them to. The council did not realize this yet. They were still focused on the shipping problem. Then the medical crisis began. Yuna had kept her word. Every human medical program had been shut down. Every shipment of medicine, every software update for medical equipment, every research file that had been shared with alien hospitals was pulled back. The effects were immediate and devastating. The Arini were the first to feel it. Their species was vulnerable to a respiratory disease that had been killing them for centuries. Yuna's team had developed a treatment 7 years ago. It was not a cure, but it reduced the death rate by 80%. The treatment required regular shipments of a compound that only human laboratories could produce. Without those shipments, the compound ran out in 11 days. On the 12th day, the first Arini hospital reported that patients were dying again. By the end of the month, 6 Arini colonies had declared medical emergencies. Their tiny delegates in the council hall no longer made chittering sounds. They sat in silence, their huge black eyes wide with fear. The Brukan had a different problem. Their homeworld had been struggling with water contamination for generations. Human engineers had built purification systems that cleaned their rivers and lakes. Those systems ran on human software. The software required updates every 90 days. The last update had been sent 60 days before Earth's departure. When the next update did not come, the systems began to fail. Within weeks, the water on 3 Brucon continents was unsafe to drink. The Volari suffered too, though they tried to hide it. Their research stations depended on human power cell technology. Without replacement cells, the stations began to lose power. Experiments that had been running for decades were ruined. Scientists sent desperate messages to Earth, begging for help. Earth did not respond. The Council held meeting after meeting. They argued. They blamed each other. The Brucon delegate accused the Volari of driving the humans away with their arrogance. The Volari delegate accused the Aurini of being too weak to survive without help. The Aurini accused everyone of ignoring the real problem. Nobody could agree on what the real problem was, except that it was getting worse. The pirate attacks came next. Without human patrol ships in the outer systems, pirate fleets grew bold. They attacked trade convoys. They raided colonies. They even struck at a council supply depot, something that had not happened in over a century. The council sent its own military ships to respond, but their forces were stretched thin. They had never needed to patrol the outer systems, because humans had always done it for them. A Volari general stood before the council and gave a report that no one wanted to hear. "We are losing control of the outer systems," he said. "If this continues, we will lose them entirely within 6 months." The hall was silent. On Earth, Dohun watched all of this from his dark room. He had screens showing every council broadcast, every military movement, every emergency signal from every alien world. He watched the numbers grow worse every day. He watched species that had laughed at humanity begin to suffer. He felt nothing about it. It was not his job to feel. It was his job to keep Earth safe. And Earth was very safe. He received reports from the border every hour. Alien ships had begun approaching human space. First came the diplomatic vessels, carrying messages from the Council. Dohun let them reach the edge of the defense grid, then sent them a simple automated message. "Human space is closed. Turn around." They turned around. Then came the military ships. A small Volari fleet tried to push through the grid near a human colony in the Kepler sector. They thought the defense platforms were bluffing. They were wrong. The platforms fired warning shots that disabled the lead ship's engines without killing anyone. The fleet retreated. Dohun watched them go. He made a note in his log. "Volari probe, Sector 7, repelled, no casualties." He did not smile. He did not celebrate. He simply moved to the next screen. Back on Earth, Yuna sat in her empty laboratory. The shelves that had once been filled with research samples were bare. The screens that had once shown data from alien hospitals were dark. Her team had been reassigned to domestic projects, working on treatments for human diseases instead of alien ones. She had spent her whole career trying to help species that were not her own. She had believed that science had no borders. She had believed that saving lives was its own reward. But she also remembered the council sessions, where alien delegates had called human medicine primitive. She remembered the Volari scientist who had stolen her research and published it as his own. She remembered the Aurini hospital that had used her treatment to save millions of lives, and then refused to admit that a human had created it. She looked at the empty shelves and told herself that she had made the right decision. In the dark spaces between stars, the galaxy continued to fall apart. And somewhere in the silence, humanity waited. 3 months had passed since Jinho walked out of the council hall. In that time, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one had predicted. Trade was collapsing. Diseases were spreading. Pirates ruled the outer systems. And Earth had gone completely silent. Not quiet, silent. There was a difference. Quiet meant that someone was choosing not to speak. Silent meant that there was nothing to hear at all. Every communication channel that had once connected Earth to the rest of the galaxy was dead. Every frequency, every relay, every signal path that had carried human voices across the stars was gone. It was as if someone had reached into the fabric of space itself and pulled out every thread that connected humanity to the rest of the universe. The Council tried everything. They sent messages on every known frequency. They aimed their most powerful transmitters directly at Earth's solar system. They even tried old radio waves, the kind that humans had used centuries ago before they developed faster methods. Nothing got through. Nothing came back. It was not a technical failure. It was a wall. Dohan had built it. He called it the Curtain. It was a network of signal-blocking satellites that surrounded all of human space in a sphere so dense that not a single photon of communication energy could pass through it. From the outside, human space looked empty, dead, as if humanity had simply vanished from the universe. The effect on the galaxy was immediate and terrifying. Species that had grown used to human presence, even if they had never appreciated it, suddenly felt the absence like a missing limb. Human technology was everywhere. Human designs were in their ships, their stations, their hospitals, their power grids. And now the people who had created all of it were gone. The Arini were the first to send an envoy. They chose their best diplomat, a small creature named Pika, who had once been friendly with several human delegates. Pika's ship crossed the border of what had been human space and flew toward Earth's solar system. It never arrived. The ship entered the Curtain and lost all navigation. Every sensor went blind. Every communication system went dead. Pika drifted in total darkness for 6 days before his emergency beacon activated, and a Council rescue ship found him floating near the edge of human space, alive but shaking. He refused to speak about what he had experienced inside the Curtain. He resigned from his position the next day. The Brucon tried a different approach. They sent a military convoy of 30 ships, heavily armed and heavily shielded. The convoy entered the Curtain and immediately lost formation. Ships drifted apart. Sensors showed nothing but empty space in every direction. After 2 days, the convoy commander ordered a retreat. Only 26 ships made it out. The other 4 were never found. The Valari, proud as always, sent their fastest scout ship. It was piloted by their best navigator, a veteran who had crossed the galaxy twice. The ship entered the Curtain at maximum speed, hoping to punch through before the signal blocking could take effect. The ship came out the other side 12 hours later. But it came out going in the wrong direction, heading away from Earth at full speed. The navigator reported that every instrument on his ship had told him he was flying toward Earth the entire time. The Curtain had not just blocked his signals, it had lied to him. After that, nobody else tried. The Council held an emergency summit. All 10,000 delegates gathered in the Great Hall, and for the first time in the history of the organization, the hall was quiet, without anyone asking for silence. Fear had done what rules never could. The Valari delegate stood at the speaking platform. He looked older than he had 3 months ago. His silver skin had lost its shine. His 6 eyes moved nervously across the crowd. "We must face the truth," he said. "We cannot reach Earth. We cannot communicate with them. We cannot force them to return. And without them, we are failing." He presented the numbers. Trade across the galaxy had dropped by 60%. 14 colonies had declared emergency status. The pirate fleets in the outer systems had grown so large that they now controlled more territory than some Council member species. 3 alien species had already begun secret negotiations to leave the Council themselves, seeing no reason to stay in an organization that could not protect them. "We made a mistake," the Valari delegate said. The word seemed to cause him physical pain. "We underestimated them. And now we are paying the price." The Brucon delegate stood up. His massive frame cast a shadow across half the hall. Then we must go to them. Not with ships, not with weapons. We must send someone they will listen to. Who? The Orini delegate asked. They will not listen to any of us. We laughed at them. All of us, every species in this hall. The argument went on for hours. Names were suggested and rejected. Plans were made and abandoned. In the end, they decided to send a single unarmed shuttle with a single message. No weapons, no military escort, no demands, just a request to talk. The shuttle was small and white. It carried no crew, only a recorded message from the Council asking Earth to open communications. It was launched into the curtain from the nearest point to Earth's solar system. It disappeared. For 30 days, nothing happened. The Council waited. Every species watched their screens and held their breath. On the 31st day, the shuttle came back. It drifted out of the curtain slowly, like a leaf floating on water. It was undamaged. Its systems were intact. But the recorded message from the Council had been erased. In its place was a single audio file. The Council played it in the Great Hall, with every delegate listening. The voice on the recording was calm, clear, and female. It said 7 words. We are not ready to talk yet. That was all. The hall erupted. Delegates shouted. Some demanded war. Some demanded more diplomacy. Some simply sat in their seats and stared at nothing, realizing for the first time that they had no power here. Humanity had all the power, and humanity had chosen to use it by doing absolutely nothing. On Earth, life continued as if the galaxy did not exist. Cities hummed with activity. Factories produced goods for human colonies. Schools taught children about stars they might never visit. People went to work, came home, ate dinner with their families, and slept peacefully under skies that were free of alien ships for the first time in 60 years. Do-hoon monitored the curtain from his control room. He had watched the Council shuttle enter and had personally decided to send it back with Yuna's recorded message. He could have destroyed it. He could have ignored it. Instead, he had chosen to remind the galaxy that Earth was still there, still watching, and still choosing silence. Yuna had recorded the message herself. 7 words. She had practiced them a dozen times, trying to get the tone right. Not angry, not cold, just firm, just honest. They were not ready to talk, not because they were afraid, not because they were weak, but because the galaxy had not yet learned its lesson. Jinho, the man who had started it all, was no longer the ambassador. He had resigned the day after his speech and returned to his home in a small town near the mountains. He taught history at a local school now. His students did not know he was the man who had stood before 10,000 alien delegates and told them that humanity was done. He preferred it that way. But sometimes, late at night, he would step outside and look up at the stars. He would think about the Great Hall and the laughter and the moment he had pressed that button. He would think about the faces of the alien delegates when they realized what was happening. And he would feel something that was not pride and not regret, but something in between. Something that tasted like justice and sadness mixed together. The galaxy continued to call out to Earth. Earth continued to say nothing. And in the silence, every species in the known universe began to understand something that humans had known all along. Respect was not given, it was earned. And the galaxy had earned nothing. 8 months had passed since Earth went silent. The galaxy was no longer falling apart slowly. It was falling apart fast. The Orini respiratory plague had spread to 11 colonies. Without human medicine, their doctors had tried to create their own version of the treatment. They failed. The compound required a manufacturing process that human scientists had spent 9 years perfecting, and the Orini could not replicate it no matter how hard they tried. Their death toll climbed every week. Hospitals that had once been places of hope became places of waiting, waiting for medicine that was never coming. The Brucan water crisis had grown into a full disaster. 2 of their continents had been declared uninhabitable. Millions of Brucan had migrated to the remaining clean zones, creating overcrowding so severe that violence had broken out. The Brucan military, once the most feared force in the galaxy, was now being used to manage refugee camps on its own homeworld. The Valari had lost contact with 7 of their outer research stations. Without human power cells, the stations had gone dark, one by one. Decades of scientific work had been lost. Valari scientists who had spent their entire careers on those stations returned home with nothing. And the pirates. The pirates had become something much worse than anyone had imagined. In the absence of human patrol ships, the pirate fleets had grown from scattered bands of criminals into organized armies. They had taken control of entire systems. They had set up their own trade networks, charging protection fees to any ship that wanted to pass through what had once been free space. Some smaller species, too weak to fight and too poor to pay, had simply abandoned their colonies and fled, not with a dramatic collapse, but with a slow, grinding failure that ate away at its foundations day by day. 12 species had formally withdrawn. 40 more had stopped attending sessions. The great hall that had once held 10,000 delegates now echoed with the voices of fewer than 6,000, and even those voices were tired and afraid. It was in this atmosphere of desperation that the council made a decision that would have been unthinkable a year ago. They would not just ask humanity to come back, they would beg. The council chose 5 delegates to carry the message, 1 from each of the 5 most powerful remaining species. They were given no weapons, no guards, and no authority to negotiate. Their only job was to reach Earth and deliver a simple plea. Please come back. We need you. We are sorry. The 5 delegates boarded a small ship and flew to the edge of human space. They expected to enter the curtain and drift in darkness like everyone else who had tried. Instead, something different happened. The curtain opened. A corridor of clear space appeared before them, like a tunnel through fog. Their instruments worked. Their navigation was accurate. Their communications were active. Someone was letting them through. Do-hun watched from his control room as the alien ship flew through the corridor he had created. He had received orders from above. Not from Jinho, who was retired. Not from Yuna, who was busy with new research. The orders came from the new leader of Earth, a woman named Suji. Suji had become head chancellor of Earth 6 months ago. She was 41 years old, born in a coastal city, raised by teachers, and trained as a diplomat. But she was not like Jinho. Jinho had been patient and calm. Suji was patient and sharp. There was a difference. Calm meant you would wait forever. Sharp meant you would wait exactly as long as necessary and not 1 second more. She had studied every report about the galaxy's decline. She knew the numbers better than the council did. She knew how many Orini were dying. She knew how many Brucon had lost their homes. She knew exactly how much damage Earth's silence had caused. And she had decided that the galaxy had suffered enough to understand the lesson, but not enough to truly learn it. Not yet. The alien delegates arrived at Earth and were escorted to a building in the capital city. It was not the old diplomatic center that had once hosted council representatives. That building had been converted into a school. Instead, the delegates were taken to a new structure built on a hill overlooking the ocean. It was simple, clean, and beautiful. It had no alien flags, no council symbols, only a single human flag flying above the entrance. Suji met them in a room with large windows that faced the sea. She sat in a chair behind a plain wooden desk. She wore no uniform, no jewelry, no symbols of rank. She looked like an ordinary woman in an ordinary room. But the 5 alien delegates felt something when they entered that room. Something they had not felt before in the presence of a human. They felt small. The Valari delegate spoke first. He was old and tired, and his silver skin had faded to gray. He placed a data tablet on the desk. It contained the Council's formal apology and a request for Earth to rejoin. Suji looked at the tablet, but did not touch it. "We have come to ask for your help," the Valari said. "Our people are suffering, all of our people. We know that we treated humanity poorly. We know that we were arrogant. We are here to say that we were wrong." Suji listened. She did not interrupt. She let each delegate speak. The Orini delegate described the plague. He spoke about children dying in hospitals that had no medicine. His voice broke. His huge black eyes filled with something that looked like tears but was not, because Orini could not cry. They could only make a soft humming sound when they were in deep pain. The room filled with that sound. The Brucan delegate spoke about the water crisis. He was a massive creature, built for war, but his hands trembled as he described families drinking contaminated water because there was nothing else. He described mothers boiling mud and hoping it would be enough to keep their children alive. The other delegates shared their own stories. Each one was worse than the last. Each one was true. When they finished, the room was quiet. The only sound was the ocean through the windows. Suji looked at them for a long time. Then she spoke. "I believe you," she said. "I believe that your people are suffering. I believe that you are sorry. But I need you to understand something." She stood up and walked to the window. "For 62 years, humanity sat in your council and asked for the same thing you are asking for now. Help, partnership, respect. And for 62 years, you said no. Not because you could not help us, but because you did not think we mattered." She turned back to face them. "Now you are here in our home, asking us for what we once asked you for. And I want you to sit with that feeling. I want you to understand what it is like to need something from someone who has the power to say no." The delegates were silent. "I am not going to say no," Suji continued. "But I am not going to say yes either. Not today." The Valari delegate leaned forward. "Then what do you want from us?" Suji sat back down. She folded her hands on the desk. "I want you to go back to the council. I want you to tell them what you saw here. I want you to tell them that Earth is strong, that Earth is thriving, and that Earth does not need the Galactic Council. Then I want you to tell them that despite all of this, we are willing to consider returning, but not as members." She paused. "As leaders." The room went cold. The delegates stared at her. The idea was enormous. Humanity, the youngest species in the galaxy, leading the council. Leading the empires that had existed for 100,000 years. It was impossible. It was arrogant. It was exactly what the humans had once been mocked for even dreaming about. But it was also the only offer on the table. The Valari delegate looked at the other 4. He saw the same answer in all their eyes. They had no choice. Their people were dying. Their worlds were falling apart. And the only species that could save them was sitting behind a wooden desk, looking at the ocean, waiting for an answer. "We will take your message to the council," the Valari said. Suji nodded. "Good." She did not shake their hands. She did not walk them to the door. She simply turned her chair toward the window and looked out at the sea, as calm and steady as the tide. The delegates left Earth. As their ship passed through the curtain and back into open space, the Orini delegate said something that none of them would ever forget. "We went to beg," he said quietly, "and they did not even need to raise their voice to make us feel it." The galaxy waited for their report, and somewhere on Earth, Suji sat at her desk and began preparing for what would come next. The vote took 11 days. 11 days of screaming, arguing, threatening, and begging. 11 days of delegates standing on the speaking platform and shouting at each other in languages that the translation drones struggled to keep up with. 11 days of the most powerful species in the galaxy fighting over a question that should have been simple, but was not. Should humanity be invited back as the leader of the Galactic Council? The Bruken were the first to say yes. Their delegate stood up on the second day and silenced the hall with his deep voice. "My people are drinking poison," he said. "My children are sick. My world is dying. If the humans want to lead, let them lead. Pride will not clean our water." The Orini followed on the fourth day. Their tiny delegate climbed onto the speaking platform and made a sound that no translator could convert. It was the sound an Orini made when it had lost all hope and then found a small piece of it again. Every species in the hall understood it without translation. Other species joined, smaller ones first, the ones who had suffered most and had the least pride to lose. Then the mid-level powers, species with fleets and colonies, who had watched their influence shrink as the galaxy fell apart. One by one, they cast their votes. The Volari were last. They waited until the 11th day. They waited because saying yes meant admitting that the species they had compared to insects was now going to rule over them. They waited because 100,000 years of civilization told them that this was wrong, that younger species did not lead older ones, that power flowed downward from those who had held it longest. But 100,000 years of civilization had not prepared them for empty hospitals and dark research stations, and a galaxy that was tearing itself apart. The Volari delegate stood on the platform. He was the oldest delegate in the room, and he looked every year of it. "Yes," he said. That was all. One word. He sat down and did not speak again. The vote passed. Humanity was invited to return to the Galactic Council, not as a member, but as its leader. The message was sent to Earth through the curtain. This time, Earth responded within 1 hour. "We accept. Prepare the hall." 2 weeks later, the curtain opened. Not a corridor this time. The entire thing dissolved. One moment, human space was invisible and sealed. The next, it was open. Stars that had been hidden for nearly a year reappeared on galactic maps. Communication channels came alive with human signals. Ships began moving through space that had been empty for months. The galaxy took a breath it had been holding for a very long time. The council hall was prepared as instructed. The small chairs in the back row, where human delegates had once sat, were removed. In their place, at the center of the hall, a single new seat was installed. It was not a throne. It was not decorated or elevated. It was a simple chair, the same kind that could be found in any human home. But its position was unmistakable. It was at the center of everything. 10,000 delegates filled the hall. For the first time in months, every seat was taken. Even the species that had withdrawn from the council returned for this moment. The air hummed with the sound of 1,000 different languages and the nervous energy of beings who were watching history happen in real time. The doors opened. A man walked in. He was young, younger than Jinho had been when he gave his farewell speech. He was 34 years old. His name was Teiho, and he was the new voice of humanity. Teiho was not what the delegates expected. He was not a soldier like Dohun. He was not a scientist like Yuna. He was not a diplomat like Jinho, or a strategist like Suji. He was a teacher. He had spent the last 8 years teaching history to children in a small school near the mountains. He had been chosen by Suji personally, because Suji understood something that the galaxy did not. The galaxy expected humanity to send a warrior, someone who would stand before them with fire in his eyes and demand obedience. Someone who would remind them of their failures and rub their faces in their weakness. That was what any other species would have done. That was what power looked like to the rest of the galaxy. But that was not what power looked like to humans. Tejo walked through the hall. He did not hurry. He looked at the delegates as he passed them. He looked at the Brucan, massive and proud and broken. He looked at the Orini, small and fragile and afraid. He looked at the Valari, ancient and tired and humbled. He looked at all of them, and he saw something that most people in his position would not have bothered to see. He saw people. Different shapes, different colors, different histories, but people. He reached the center of the hall and stood beside the simple chair. He did not sit down. He turned to face the delegates and waited for the hall to fall silent. It did not take long. The silence came quickly, pulled down by the weight of the moment. Tejo spoke. His voice was not loud, but like Jinho before him, the platform carried it everywhere. "My name is Tejo," he said. "I am a teacher. I teach children about the past so they can build a better future. That is what I do. That is all I have ever done." He paused and looked around the room. "I know what you expect me to say. You expect me to remind you of what you did. You expect me to list your failures. You expect me to stand here and tell you that humanity is better than you, stronger than you, smarter than you. You expect anger." He shook his head slowly. "I am not angry. Anger is what got us here. Your anger at our existence. Our anger at your disrespect. Anger built the wall between us. Anger kept it standing, and anger will not tear it down." The hall was perfectly still. "I am not here to punish you. I am not here to rule over you. I am here because my people believe that the galaxy can be better than it has been. We believe that 62 years ago, when we first joined this council. We believed it when we sat in the back row and raised our hands and got ignored. We believed it when we built your shipping lanes and designed your medicine and powered your stations, and we believe it now." He took a single step forward. "But belief is not enough. Not anymore. For 62 years, we believed, and you laughed. Not because we want power, but because someone needs to care enough to do the hard work, and we have proven that we are willing to do it." He looked at the Valari delegate. "We will restore your research stations, every one of them." He looked at the Orini delegate. "We will send medicine to your colonies before the end of this week. Your people will stop dying." He looked at the Brucan delegate. "We will fix your water systems. Not just repair them. We will build new ones that will last for generations." He looked at the rest of the hall. "And we will clear the pirates from the outer systems. We will rebuild the trade routes. We will do everything we did before and more. Because that is who we are. That is who we have always been." He paused one final time. The hall held its breath. "But you will never disrespect us again." 7 words, simple words, words that a child could understand. But in that hall, surrounded by 10,000 representatives of the most powerful civilizations in the known galaxy, those 7 words carried the weight of everything that had happened. Every laugh, every insult, every ignored hand, every empty chair, every silent month, every death that could have been prevented, every river that had turned to poison, every child that had gone without medicine. 7 words that meant, we remember, we forgive, but we will never forget. Nobody argued, nobody laughed, nobody made a sound. Tejo sat down in the simple chair at the center of the hall. He folded his hands in his lap and looked out at the galaxy that humanity had just inherited. Back on Earth, the others watched. Dohun watched from his control room and nodded once. The defense grid remained active. It would always remain active. Trust was good. Caution was better. Yuna watched from her laboratory, which was already full again. Crates of medicine were being loaded onto ships. Her team was working around the clock. She had never stopped wanting to help. She had only stopped being willing to help for free. Jinho watched from his small house near the mountains. His students had found out who he was. They had seen the old recordings. They looked at him differently now, with a kind of awe that made him uncomfortable. He told them that he was not a hero. He told them that heroes did not walk away. He told them that what he had done was simply necessary. Suji watched from her office, overlooking the sea. She had chosen Teiho because he was kind, and she knew that kindness after strength was more powerful than strength alone. The galaxy had seen humanity's strength. Now it needed to see humanity's heart. She closed her eyes and listened to the sound of the waves. For the first time in a year, the galaxy was quiet. Not the silence of absence, not the silence of fear, but the quiet of a new beginning. Outside, the stars shone. Human ships moved through space once more, carrying medicine and supplies and engineers and hope. The curtain was gone. The borders were open. The galaxy was healing. And at the center of it all, in a simple chair, a teacher from Earth sat and watched over a universe that had finally learned the most human lesson of all. You do not earn respect by demanding it. You earn it by giving it. And the moment you stop giving it is the moment you lose everything. The universe had gone mad when the humans left. Now the humans were back. And the universe, slowly and painfully and honestly, began to find its way home.